we'll go ahead. Welcome everyone to the Gateway monthly webinars. My name is John Folk from the National Association of Asian American Professionals. The Gateway webinar series hosted by ALA, the Asian Leaders Alliance, NAP, the National Association of Asian American Professionals, as well as the Asian Business League, ABL, to equip our members and individuals with the resources and guidance to become tomorrow's leaders. This month we're happy to have Keith Koo and Henry Kim as our speakers for the evening. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Keith, and Keith will introduce Henry. Keith is a founder and managing partner of Guardian Insight Group, a technology risk advisory firm dedicated to guiding enterprise companies and startups in identifying, assessing, controlling, and mitigating risks associated with doing business with technology, as well as.
It's okay, John. It's
okay,
too long.
Okay. Keith has lots of credits to his name. He's also the creator and host of Silicon Valley Insider. It's a radio show and podcast, which helps people discover the new emerging technologies. And he's interviewed C-level executives, Fortune 100 companies, government officials, as well as unicorns in all different parts of the industry. We're happy to have him today to talk about the metaverse, NFTs, and what it means to you. So, Keith, I'll let you take it from here.
Hey, thanks, John. Great to be here. Hi, everyone. Welcome from Mexico City, where I'm at a family office event. You'll see people walking in the background, and just so great to be here. I think I'll start off with that tonight, because I know I see a lot of friends, not just from the Asian Business League, Asian Leaders Alliance, and NAP San Francisco, but we have friends from all over the world, people we've met on virtual spaces. And so I just think it's really powerful that we've been able to connect. And so I know I've met a number of you personally. I might be calling on you later. But I see May, I see Kelly, I see Callista, I see Gloria. If I'm not calling you, it's just because I can't scroll that fast, but thanks everyone for being here. So tonight we're talking about the metaverse, NFTs, and you. And we're going to start off super basic. So if you have a better or more advanced understanding, feel free to chime in. Henry Kim, who is actually been involved in media his entire career, doing documentary film, doing commercials, such as the commercial for Venom recently, and also very involved with other projects. Henry is actually fully immersed in NFTs. He's going to talk about the project he's working, Metacomica, which is coming out very soon. And also we may have, depending on questions and answers, we also have ABL's general counsel and attorney and former last year, the California Lawyers Association's chair of the business group, Soyun Choi. So anyway, starting off with Henry, why don't you give a little more introduction into yourself?
Hey everybody, thank you for having me. I definitely recognize some of the people. So yeah, what's up? So as Keith said, I'm a filmmaker. I've had a commercial production company for a long time. I've done a lot of TV commercials and just marketing campaigns for big brands and that kind of stuff. And you know, have always been a storyteller. And during the pandemic, I started going really hard and back into comic books, which was actually my first love as a child, and my first dream was to be a comic book artist. And then so I decided to start a comic book publishing company, and then I was kind of just slowly developing that and doing more like cause-based things, like nonprofit type stuff with it. And then NFTs came along and they just like totally changed my perspective. And now it's an NFT comic book company. So we're doing NFTs and stuff. And yeah, so I kind of, in the past year, last year, I just kind of totally let go of my old, I mean, I still have a little bit of projects I'm working on to finish, but like I just sold a documentary to a studio recently, and so I'm finishing that. And but I'm, for all intents and purposes, I'm like all in on NFTs, and I've kind of just like given up my my past life, so to speak, to just really dive in and be in the community and learn and just figure out how it all works. And part of being early in a space like this, when you really believe in it, is to be an advocate and to try and help as many people understand and get educated and stuff. And that's why I'm here. So I really appreciate you having me.
Thanks a lot, Henry. And that's kind of how it goes. A lot of people, especially the creator side, are jumping right into NFTs because it represents to many liberation, being able to control and monetize your art. So I'm going to start off with just some basic principles, assuming that we all know nothing about what's going on with NFTs. So to begin with, I wanted to start this whole concept of Web 3.0. In order to get to Web 3.0, you have to understand first Web 1.0. So if you've been around long enough, when the internet was really, really young, not when Al Gore claimed that it made it, but like in say the early 90s to mid 90s, Web 1.0 was basically static content and static pages. So you might have the original Wikipedia type of thing, and you're able to just like look at static pages and read content, and that's all you could do with it. And then Web 2.0 came out. So I spent most of my career at Cisco Systems fueling the growth of the internet. So Web 2.0 is where you could actually interact with websites. So you saw the rise of Amazon, you saw the rise of eBay, now Facebook, and of course, these other platforms. But what we realized and what happened was this concept called centralization, which is important. So many of these largest internet properties became the behemoths. And so even though we interact with them, there's this thought that we don't have control. I was talking, one of my projects is, which I won't get too into tonight, but in essence, if you're a creator, let's talk about music. I know Calista is an artist, and I also want to congratulate Calista, who had a recent album launch. So yeah, maybe we'll have Calista come on too. So when iTunes came out, a creator could get like 7 cents a download maximum from $1 of purchase. So you purchase $1 download of Calista's song, and she gets 7 cents. And if you're U2, my favorite rock band, you might get 10 cents. Well, doing the research for a project I'm working on, Spotify today is 0.0003 cents per play. That comes out to $1,300 if you have 1 million downloads. So that's really limiting. And so this thought that the internet's actually controlled by the centralization, but we all use it. So Web 3.0 is this greater concept that we can disaggregate, decentralize ways to use the internet, and you can actually create your own universes. So this isn't directly tied to a metaverse, but where the metaverse becomes important is that these virtual communities are sprouting up. I'm not going to go into a really lofty definition of metaverse because it means different things to different people, but just imagine that your physical self or your avatar, your digital self, can interact interchangeably. And right now, because Facebook just branded into Meta, you can see that this term is going to come up more and more and more. And if you happen to own a domain that had Meta in it, it's probably worth a lot more than it was when you first bought it. So I'm going to pause there for a second. Henry, did you want to add anything to the Web 1.0 through Web 3.0?
I think that, with each iteration of the web, which you touched upon a little bit, there is a philosophical, social component to it that happens. Like, with Web 1.0 is just like the first time people could even connect with each other or communicate with each other across like the world, right? And so it was like this first level of digital interaction between humans, and businesses started to appear on the internet and all that stuff. And then in the Web 2.0, obviously with social, we became so interconnected that we tore our country apart. And then, but on top of that, the technology also provided in a way where a lot of people could now start their own businesses, and it became a much more of a DIY type culture in terms of people realizing like, oh, like I could actually use this technology to create something that could actually change my life. And, now with Web 3.0, with decentralization and all this new technology is now, especially NFTs, we're now reaching like the next level of that, which is more freedom, more control over your money, your finances, what you do with it, how it's used. And then in the digital space, like with NFTs, like more options on how to create communities or monetization for yourself and things. So we're trending towards, you know, more technology, more interconnection, and more autonomy, which we'll see how that works out. But that's where we're headed.
Right, good point. And so this also is interesting too, because Web 3.0 isn't only about monetization for creators and kind of decoupling from centralized platforms such as Amazon or eBay for some, but also in terms of this rise of this concept of disinformation or fake news, or not being able to trust centralized news sources anymore, and people being able to come out with their own content that's trustworthy. So that is where we're headed right now. So before we get into NFTs, I think we're going to do kind of a look back on the last, let's say 13, 14 years of cryptocurrency. So, you know, Bitcoin, by now, people are aware of it. Bitcoin is kind of right now the gold standard, so to speak, in analogous to actually digital gold to gold. It's finite. There's a set number of Bitcoins that will ever exist. It's 21 million if you're wondering, and we're in the 19 million range. And I'm not going to get into too much other than I think the last estimate I heard is going to be like 2040 before we get to like 20,999,999. And there's a whole bunch of math around that. But Bitcoin represents to some people like this thought of decentralized currency. And again, I purposely couch it because I'm not going to give any tonight, I'm not going to give any opinion one way or the other what you should do in terms of trading, investment, whatever. It's just something to think about, that it is considered by those who hold or those interested in that it's analogous to gold. And then we have other types of blockchains. So Ethereum is probably the one that most people are most interested in, that Ethereum has utility, and that utility allows you to do things that you previously couldn't do. The importance of a blockchain more practically, and for me, I talk a lot more on my show and with people about blockchain as a technology versus investing or doing something with crypto. Throughout the ages, people, when they want to barter, or they want to do trading, or they want to transact, the concept of trust is often very difficult. And so it's funny because I was at a conference and they talk about how the Medicis from like the 1400s take claim for what we know as double entry accounting, so credits and debits. I would argue that actually there are the Hebrews and the Chinese or Asians that have that claim, but whatever. What blockchain represents is triple entry accounting or trustless transactions. And that's why people flock to it in terms of wanting to do something on the platform. And there are centralized systems and decentralized systems. And this is important. So Bitcoin is considered a completely decentralized system. It is a transparent ledger. It's visible to anyone that can actually interpret the ledger and see every transaction that's ever occurred. Identities might be obfuscated or hidden or anonymous. And that's where a lot of people were very into the beginnings when we heard about crypto, why people were interested. They could do things that they thought could be undetected. And that's whether it can be or not, it's also a future thing to talk about. So currency by definition is something that's fungible. So as a former banker, we learned, I know a lot of bankers are out there and money people, $1, a euro, a renminbi, or Bitcoin, or Ethereum, these are fungible currencies. An NFT by definition is a non-fungible token. And this is going to be funny because a lot of people interchange crypto and NFT just because it's easy when they're trying to refer to blockchain. But by definition, NFTs cannot be a currency. So that's the first thing you got to deprogram yourself with. As a non-fungible token, I'm not also going to get into any securities laws or anything like that. It is simply at its purest form, a digital ID. It's a serial number. A couple of years before NFTs became really popular, I had interviewed Jacques Voorhees, who's the father of Eric Voorhees. Eric Voorhees is the founder of MetaMask, the most widely used crypto wallet in the world. And Jacques is a diamond dealer for 45 years and had always wanted to figure out a way to trade industrial grade diamonds easily and safely without having to carry it around. And so he actually took advice from his son to use a micron telescope and to look inside a diamond, take 100 photographs, record it on an NFT, a blockchain, record the photos there, put the diamond and that in a safe, and then trade that as an NFT on OpenSea. So that's kind of like some of the first use cases of NFTs, not necessarily what we think about JPEGs today. I'm going to pause right there and bring Henry back in, because I think now Henry is the right time to kind of bring in what NFTs represent for the more recent, let's say, year.
Okay. I think one thing I want to kind of, because I think about NFTs a lot and how to explain it to people, and why is there such a disconnect for people to understand, and when you really go down to like first principles, it's like it really just ties actually to the concept of ownership, not to the concept of like blockchain, for instance, because an NFT is just itself is just a piece of code that signifies proof of something, right? Proof of ownership. The way I think about it is like, if you buy a bus ticket, right? If you lose that bus ticket in between and you're supposed to transfer, you no longer have the right to transfer because you don't have proof that you own the bus ticket. It's gone. Not only that, like technically you're not allowed to transfer that ticket to somebody else. So therefore that bus ticket, even if you do have it, really has no extra value. And so I view NFTs as a way to signify ownership, whether it's in a digital world or there are actually physical real world use cases. Like I think similar to the diamonds example, I think actually eventually all fine art will be sold. Physical fine art will be sold with an NFT component, because you could do something like take a laser or 3D scan of the Mona Lisa, put that scan, attach it to an NFT, and then now when you sell it, they will be able to actually verify that it is the actual piece that you're buying. So there's a lot of use cases where you can use an NFT. It's really just the blockchain part comes in, where this NFT is now being recorded onto the blockchain, so everybody knows that you really own this thing, which, you know, owning the NFT itself, the value depends on what is promised with that ownership, right? Does that make sense so far?
Yeah,
I think, okay, so now just to break down for people some use cases of NFTs, because it's very confusing. You see a lot of different things, a lot of stories. And so I just want to kind of break down for people kind of what the main use cases are right now, which number one, basically there's fine art. So just as any other work of art that you would sell, an NFT would work the same way. Like for instance, if you were to turn a Banksy piece into an NFT, there would just be one of them. Somebody makes a bid on it, and then they basically own that work of art. Now, that functions really identically as the art world. It depends on the artist, their reputation, you know, their value to the future of society that affects the value now. And as an artist, to sell those NFTs, you have to do the same work of building an audience and a reputation and networking and all that stuff. So when it comes to the art world, it's pretty much just kind of porting over the existing art world into the digital space. Now, the next piece, which is what we call PFP projects, are like those JPEGs, like the profile photos you might have seen, like of an ape or some silly creature, you know? And I think that's the one that most people are like, what the heck is this? Why are you spending $200,000 on a JPEG of an ape, you know? And in that case, it represents a couple things. The ownership is, first of all, it represents most of those projects are the value is in the community that they're building, right? So if you were an early or like something, that means that you were in a very exclusive group of people that are really at the forefront of technology and blockchain and crypto and decentralization and culture, like just affecting culture with technology. So in the early days, it's really exciting because you have to remember they used to be free. I mean, CryptoPunks were free. Anybody could have one, right? And now they're worth a lot of money. And So the people that supported it in the beginning were literally just people that, you know, believe in blockchain, believe in decentralization and ownership, all that stuff that we just talked about. And so essentially it became the cool kids club in the internet, right? Like if you're in this club, that means you are super early. Like most people don't even understand what's going on. And so I think those early projects represented joining that club, and then they started adding more what we call utility, which is basically value for this ownership, right? And for instance, with Bored Apes, they allow you to do anything you want with your picture of your ape. So there's people creating a coffee company, there's people doing like fashion lines, there's all sorts of use cases of people starting new businesses and new ventures, using their profile picture as like their basically symbol, as their mascot, as their, you know, character, right? Like they're even making comic books around some of these characters, that kind of stuff. And in that case, that's actually really, really interesting, because now what's happening is this is becoming a decentralized franchise in a way. So imagine if you have 10,000 people all starting their own business using the same branding, right? If you're successful with your coffee company and I'm successful with my fashion brand, then all of a sudden we're all contributing to the value of this IP, and therefore the value of the NFTs you're holding, and providing other value to each other for your own businesses as the network grows stronger. So for those types of projects, really what you're looking for is you're looking for a network effect, and you know, a community and founders that are really providing a lot of value to you for holding it in exchange for holding it. Now that exclusive club idea is really starting to play out more explicitly. Like, you know, you're going to start seeing networks in different cities where it's like, hey, if you want to come to this nightclub, you're going to have, or you can, to get in or to be a VIP, you're going to have to own this NFT, which is basically like an access pass. Or you could start to think of them less as profile photos and more like membership cards, almost like you own this membership card and you get these benefits. But the crazy part is now, because it's an NFT, you can actually sell it, like it has value, right? Like just it's just again adding to the next level of ownership. Like you literally own your relationship with this property, and it, as it grows value, you get to decide what to do with it, if you want to trade it or sell it or hold it, that kind of stuff. And then we're moving also into a space where NFTs are really going to replace like Kickstarter and GoFundMe and Patreon, because it's like with the Kickstarter, for instance, if you raise money, you provide these perks, they get their perks, and then they go away, and then it's up to you to kind of like re-engage the community. And it's just like this kind of Web 2.0 dance that you do, where you're just constantly trying to get a hold of your audience and communicate with them and monetize them. With NFTs, like you are really creating a much closer connection with your audience, where now they'll know like, oh, if I support this artist and buy their NFT, not only do I get like this song from them, but like I get to, and you know, I get to feel good that I supported them. But now there's actually value, because let's say they become like the next big pop star, then all of a sudden you hold their NFT, that's going to grow in value. But also as an artist, you get to share more utility with your supporters. So instead of just saying, hey, I'm going to do this one campaign, you know, please give me $50 or whatever, and I'll give you this signed album or something, you can say, hey, if you buy my NFT, you get this signed album and blah, blah, but also throughout the year, as we do more stuff, then we'll give you more benefits. So there's a benefit to holding on to it. So I think NFTs are, in a way, while the technology itself is not like some advanced thing that's groundbreaking, it's what's groundbreaking is the ability to create new contracts with other people in society, right? It's the ability to just make an agreement for something. And then the last thing I would say is there's a lot of just practical use cases for NFTs, where just the fact that it gets recorded onto a permanent ledger that cannot be changed provides a lot of opportunity to protect people. I'll give you one example. Like in the comic book world, like there's an artist named John Byrne, and you know, he drew a lot of like the iconic X-Men stories in the 80s and 90s, right? Like a lot of the stuff that ended up being on TV and in movies. They were based on his stories and art. I mean, he was really the illustrator, but the point is that our artwork is really important. And so, you know, he might have sold his original art, right? A page from a comic book for like $75. But now they go for like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And guess what? That artist makes none of it. The dealers keep all the money. And just recently, this has really kicked up a debate in the comic book world, because, you know, it's really black and white. Is there's this artist that created the first black suit for Spider-Man, and his cover for that suit sold for $3 million in an auction, and he got none of it, even though he's the one that created it. And so with an NFT, you could attach that to all your art, and you could say, hey, go ahead and buy my art for whatever it's worth now. But as the value goes up, it's written in the contract, and it's just going to happen automatically without me even doing anything. I'm automatically going to get paid a royalty every time it gets resold. So that way, these artists are protecting themselves, their estates, their families, because it's really a tragedy that there's a lot of these artists that contributed to billions and billions and billions of dollars of revenue, and then not only do they get nothing, but their families are still like poor. You know, it's just ridiculous. So I think there's a lot of use cases where artists can be protected, but just people in general, you know, like, you know, what if like your mechanic had to record everything that they did onto a permanent record, right? Like, and that became the record of your car. You had an NFT that went along with your car. Then if something went wrong, you could actually track it back to that person. You know, there's accountability that happens when you record onto a ledger. You know, the last case I'll give you an example is I met a guy that has a patent for like these kind of magnetic filaments that they use in money that allows people to verify that, you know, the paper stock that is used for money is actually the right kind of paper stock. And he was saying that you could use NFTs and blockchains to basically fix supply chain problems. For instance, let's say you buy steel from China. Then they mix those particles into their steel. When you scan it, the NFT pops up and verifies the authenticity of it. And then when they ship it out to you, when you receive it, then you scan it and you can verify it. Because a lot of times what happens is the products get switched out, the materials end up being not what you're expecting. I mean, the Bay Bridge itself got delayed, I think, like 4 or 5 years because like they were sent a faulty beam, the only beam that goes in the middle of it. It was like this steel thing, and it was like totally junk, and they had to get a new one sent from China. And so it's like, you know, there's a lot of practical use cases. So I would say, again, to summarize, it's either fine art sales, it's like creating a community or a club, it's creating exclusive access, it's also just security for yourself as an artist, and then whatever miscellaneous things people end up coming. I think there's going to be a lot of use cases that we're just scratching the surface. So.
Yeah, thanks, Henry. And I really appreciate that in this whole conversation, we haven't talked about what most people think about NFTs is kind of get rich quick or investment schemes, right? So we'll touch on that in a second. I did want to reiterate that I think in terms of when we go through market shifts or how we transform the way we think about work. So the analogy, and again, I do sympathize with the comic book creators. I'm putting my corporate hat on, but I've not been in corporate for like over 7 years. If you think about like an engineer at a technology company who creates a product, or like Eric Yuan, who before he went to Zoom was trying to create a new version of WebEx, and then of course he broke out and created Zoom. But how many instances of creators, whether they're art or whether it's an engineering or whether something else, that's always the corporate that's going to get the profits. Even if you're an engineer as a salary, you're not going to fully participate. Like in that example you gave, Henry, with the $3 million cover for the Black Suit Spider-Man, which I do own an original copy of the comic book. So I'm happy about that. so
keep growing in value. Yes.
Right. So I think what I really appreciated with what you shared is that I truly believe that NFTs are going to transform many industries because of the digital provenance and the ability to then do things like the admission tickets that you're talking about, where you can create different levels. So let me give you an example. One of my friends is the principal engineer, or was the principal engineer for James Cameron between Titanic and Avatar. And he has one of the most successful AR/VR companies in Hollywood, although he moved to Vancouver. He created NFTs not to monetize in the sense of increasing in value. He did NFTs early in order to gain access. So imagine that he has a library of classic rock albums and properties. And so he has access to that IP. He can actually create virtual, I'll call it a virtual rock concert, or it could be a virtual museum. And so if you are, and I know Prince is a bad example because he didn't really protect his identity before he passed, but let's just say he did. My friend can actually create levels of access into that digital experience. So you could either be at a concert watching Prince, you could be on stage with Prince, or you could be playing a virtual guitar with Prince based on the level of access that's programmed into that NFT, for one example. Henry gave great use cases, supply chain. And also I want to say this too, although right now NFTs are very popular, we're still in the very early stages of blockchain technology in general. So whatever happens today doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be the thing tomorrow, but the thing that we're leveraging right now. So I want to get into your project, Henry, Metacomica, and how that applies to some things we talked about so far.
Yeah, I mean, basically Metacomica is a publishing media company. We do comic books as our first line of IP creation, and then they would go on to be developed for whatever medium makes sense, whether it's TV or movies or video games, that kind of stuff. You know, there's a lot of small publishing companies that are, you know, successfully creating comic book series, like limited comic book series or graphic novels, and then they end up optioning them into, you know, movies and stuff. But I think for us, we want to go even further, which is all the way into the metaverse, which is why we're an NFT comic book company as well, because we want to not just create content for traditional media, but we want to make sure that these stories end up, you know, in future media formats, which is essentially VR and AR. And I'm guessing eventually we'll plug our brains into a computer like the Matrix. But in any case, so we are a future forward kind of comic book company. We definitely will do some traditional publishing and, you know, retail distribution, but really focusing on the digital medium, because there are so many people out there that are growing up just reading webtoons and comics online, and there's a giant market for manga and anime, and we feel that the Western comic book market is pretty behind, and they haven't figured out how to capture that market. And so our goal is to not just be kind of the bridge between technology, but the bridge between cultures of West and East, because I think there's a lot of beauty to both formats. And just the fact that, like, you know, kids are reading manga, I mean, they're reading black and white comic books backwards, right? So there's a market. There is a market for people. They're just not reading the Western comics because the stories are just so stale and not cool. Like every kid I meet, I always ask them, they always say they watch anime, they love Marvel movies, and they don't read the comics. They don't read Marvel comics. So I think, you know, our point is to push the storytelling medium forward in a lot of ways and just kind of change the industry, and kind of drag them into the future, because they are stuck in the 90s.
That's a good point. And what I like about Metacomica, having grown up with comic books, is that you get to be the superhero. You get to actually create your own avatar, do your own custom design, be able to have your own superpowers, and then be able to, if it's a really good concept, be able to own the rights to that, and then be able to do what you want with it.
So yeah, that's basically the concept behind our launch. So we're doing an NFT drop. It's basically, I guess the first time we're actually talking about it in a public format, but basically it's called Alpha Heroes, and it's an NFT project which is definitely pushing the boundaries. It hasn't been done yet this way. The concept is basically, what if you could have created Spider-Man with Stan Lee and got a royalty from every time Spider-Man appeared thereafter? So when Sony bought the rights to make Spider-Man movies, he was valued in 2016, I think, at like between $5 and $6 billion. That's how much an imaginary character is worth. Naruto is a $10 billion franchise. Demon Slayer is already a $7 billion franchise. Yeah, Pokemon is like the GOAT, you know, that kind of stuff. So the idea is like, we're truly giving the fans an experience that they've never had before, where you get to create your own character. Like, we're going to create like a video game kind of designer where you literally get to choose the gender, the skin color, the eyes, the costume, the powers, all that stuff. It's really customized, and that gives you even more pride in the ownership. But then what happens is, you not only can you use this character for whatever you want, it's kind of a franchisee model where basically we still own the property, but you as a franchisee are going to get resources to promote it, and also kind of guidelines and the ability to basically make your own business. And it is a franchise model in the sense that we could yank it back if, for instance, somebody's misusing their character and is kind of tarnishing the brand or something like that. But anyways, the point is, we will do like kind of like this community engaged Royal Rumble storytelling thing, where out of the 10,000, like the top 100 will get published in a manga series, and they will receive royalties every time that character appears in any format, as long as they hold that NFT. And they could, you know, it could grow in value, and then they could sell the NFT to someone else. But it's truly never been done before in this industry, and or I don't know, maybe any industry. I know they're doing distributed storytelling techniques and stuff, but this is I think the first one where it's really like you actually get to create the character from scratch yourself, and then be a part of the process of building them up, and, you know, like making them valuable. And so so that's really fun, you know, like that's kind of why we want to, again, straddle the line of technology and storytelling and involvement with the community and empowering the fans and all that sort of stuff. You know, we have some pretty high level people working on the project. We have a team that provided developers for NBA Top Shots, which was like a really, really huge NFT project from the NBA. And one of our lead developers did the Steph Curry NFT drop. So we're like really building like a really good team of high level NFT people that to launch this. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Henry. Before we get to the Q&A, how can people find out more about Metacomica?
Oh, it's just metacomica.com. We're getting ready to do the first public kind of sneak peek of the NFT launch pretty soon, and then we'll probably do the mint like in April or something like that. But one thing I do want to go back to, which you mentioned, was the money part, the scams and things. And I think, you know, people get really confused what's going on. I think there's a couple of things. Number one, people will overspend, especially crypto rich people will overspend on a JPEG to join the cool club, and will feel cool by just spending a lot to show that they did that, right? Like Logan Paul spent like whatever 200 grand or however much on an NFT, and so there's like the social status part of it, but then there's definitely most of the ecosystem right now are just people who are flippers, speculators that are just literally just trying to find a project that might go up in value and then sell it to somebody else before it drops in value. They don't even care if the project is valuable or not. And then you have all the people making the junk projects that are taking advantage of those speculators that want to make money off of those people that are desperate to make money really quickly. So they just pump out really terrible projects that have no, intrinsic value or any ethics behind it. And then they just take the money and run. And then you have, actual hackers and scammers that are trying to find ways to exploit these projects. So it's just, because it's so deep in the technology world, it's just rife with people that are positioned to kind of take advantage of this new form of social contract to convince people to give them their money. And unfortunately, a lot of these people spending the money don't think about it as like an investor would or a trader or something. They're like just kind of blindly spending money on whatever. So we have a problem right now where there's a lot of terrible projects, a lot of terrible buyers. Definitely there will be a bubble, I'm guessing, that's going to pop and then what's going to be left afterwards, just like with crypto, is the people who truly believe in the kind of positive use cases and the future of it will stay with it and reap all the rewards as it goes back up, because that's just the way it works with new technologies. So for me, I think very much on the long term, and try to figure out ways to create a value that will last forever. And so, but if you're thinking of buying NFTs, like when people ask me, I never really advise them on buying NFTs because it's so volatile and so risky and all that. Like, very difficult game to get into. It's like worse than day trading almost. But if you're interested in getting in because you want to, be part of the future and be in early, so that way once everybody else is doing it, like you've already positioned yourself in a way where you're going to benefit, then now is totally the time. You're still super early. Only like 3% of the world is using crypto right now, so an even smaller percentage of that are buying NFTs. So eventually the corporations and everybody are just going to use NFTs all the time, and the general public will have no choice but to buy NFTs and engage with them. And so I think for anybody that's interested in the space, even just being here listening is really valuable, into the sense that you're taking action. And the more that you can learn about NFTs and experiment and just get in and try something or be a part of somebody else's project just to learn that kind of stuff, like the more you'll be able to figure out how to make it fit for your why and your intentions and your lifestyle. So that's just something I wanted to bring up real quick.
Yeah, that's important. And thanks, Henry. As always, buyer beware. Always, I recommend don't invest in something that you don't understand. And I have very successful friends in other areas of technology that won't touch certain things, such as NFTs or crypto or blockchain. They do other types of investments. So just take the time to understand. That's why we're doing this series. If it makes sense, we'll continue to do more based on blockchain or crypto or what have you. I know we only have about 14 minutes left for the regular session before we get to the networking session, which I do encourage everyone.
Oh, sorry. Let's do Q&A.
No, it's good. So we have some Q&A. Go ahead, Henry. Go ahead. No, so
no, that's it. I was saying,
there are
Q&A.
Yes. So there's a couple of questions in the chat already. Feel free to add more or get to the moderators. So one question is, could there ever be different blockchain database network, or is it standardized and common one? So one thing I'll mention is all blockchains. I think last time I checked, there's like over 14,000, and that doesn't mean 14,000 legit, probably less than 1% in my view. But blockchains are parallel universes. People don't really understand how easy it is to create a blockchain. So just because, like, literally Henry and I could clone Bitcoin in 2 hours, but it wouldn't be worth anything because it's based on adoption and usage and the community. So that's really important when we think about how these type of Web 3.0 things work, is that the blockchain technology in itself is not difficult. Although when it comes to NFTs, so another question is like, what's the right protocol, what have you? Most NFTs up till now have been written on a permutation of Ethereum, which is based on a software language called Solidity, which when Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, decided to use it, wasn't a widely adopted software language. And there isn't, relative to other software developers, there aren't as many. And so Solidity developers are in high demand. So it's not a question of if it's easy or not easy to create blockchains. Can you find a Solidity developer, or can you learn that skill yourself? As a parent, and to the other parents out there, if you have children who have the ability to code, you might want them to take a couple of weeks of Solidity training to augment your family income. That's a joke. I'm just saying that's something.
It's kind of not a joke though. If your kid already knows how to code, just let them study Solidity for 6 months or a year, and they're going to make more money than you ever did. It's like it's crazy and that's going to be valuable for like at least another 5 years, I'm guessing. Maybe probably a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But I think to answer your question real quick, first of all, nobody puts NFTs on Bitcoin, so Ethereum is the number one. You have Bitcoin and Ethereum as the main blockchains, and then there's like probably a half dozen other contenders that are trying to get to that, that level. And so when you're adopting a blockchain, you have to take that into consideration. It's almost like making a bet on which network is going to survive. But in the future, though, you will be able to just go cross-chain. That's what people are working on. So it does, you know, in the future, you could buy a Bitcoin on some, I mean, a NFT on some obscure blockchain and then sell it, you know, or exchange it for a different kind of coin or something like that. So eventually it'll be, you know, very easy to bridge between, and it won't really matter at that point.
Correct. That's still like the holy grail of integration, the interoperability between these different chains. So anyway, great question. Next one, anyone working on a project that a first timer can contribute their time, lack of coding skills to learn and get started to create a community? I think I need to understand the question if it's more, how does somebody dive into learning and investing in NFTs, or is somebody trying who has some coding skills trying to get into an NFT project so that they can then partake in some type of share of the equity or token? Before Henry jumps in, I want to say that when it comes to NFTs, in my view, the market is really for only experienced people. The people that want to start the NFTs want to actually pay top dollar to get the right team in place because of how fast these things are moving. So probably not the right place for you to volunteer your time and skills to glean off somebody else's coding skills. They're going to want you to have done something, or you might say, I'm going to work gratis or free, or try to figure it out that way. What do you think, Henry?
I mean, I think, either you find a project you want to do that you're passionate about, and then you enlist the help of people, or you do it the opposite. You find a project that looks interesting or somebody who's doing something, and then just ask how you could help. I mean, we're so early that you don't have to have a lot of experience. You could have no experience. If you're willing to help, you're going to get some sort of shot. Like, I know a girl in Hong Kong who she just wanted to learn how to moderate for NFT projects, and she kind of did the community management for a project that went really well, and now they're like literally like bringing her to the US on a work visa to continue with the company and stuff, because that's how it works. It's so early that like, even myself, like, definitely if anybody's interested, then I have a lot of projects that I have connections to that need help, different types of help. And so it's all the way from help from someone who literally has no experience and maybe will just do something really mundane to start, or people with specialized skills that might be able to help implement that. Like, I was just talking with a friend who he's a CRO, and so we were discussing ways to increase revenue options for one of these projects. And he's never done NFTs, but he knows how to make money. So that's valuable, because a lot of these creators, the technologists and artists, are usually the least capable of actually doing all the other stuff that's really important. That's just besides the technology and the art, is the operations and the marketing and the community engagement and the accounting. I mean, legal. I mean, there's so many places you can get in at this point. So yeah, if anybody is interested, even if maybe I don't have a specific opportunity, I could still help connect people, or find opportunities, things like that, because it's going to become like a rush of things. And if you think about every iteration of technology all the way from the Industrial Revolution, it's like a small group of people get it, and then a little bit larger group of people get it, and then all of a sudden everybody gets it, and they are like rushing to get in. So like right now we're just like at the very, very early stage where literally, if you start from zero today, if you start getting involved now, by the end of the year, you are going to be considered a veteran of the NFT space, because nobody's been doing this longer than 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's making up as they go along. So it's the best time to get in.
Hey, Henry, we're gonna move on to a couple more questions. So question is, who holds the actual artwork if digitally sold, and can you prevent it from fraud or replication?
So that's one of the biggest challenges that we're having, is figuring out that you can upload a JPEG to the NFT, the JPEG, but it's really limited on the file sizes that you can upload to the actual blockchain. And the bigger the file size, the more expensive it is. So really, people, it's more like the NFT directs you to the place that holds it. So you might be a Google link that you just download the JPEG or whatever, or like a crypto server or something like that. So those things need to be figured out. And in terms of protecting from fraud, I mean, that's the challenge, is that there is rampant fraud. So even if you create a project, like some other group is going to literally copy it and upload it and make like an identical website and try to rip people off. And so there are measures being created in different marketplaces so that they can, you register your project. So it'll be kind of like with the music, with YouTube and stuff, how they can identify the song and issue a takedown if you want. I think eventually we'll get there. But that'll probably require some sort of machine learning to identify the images correctly and register in some sort of centralized or decentralized, but centralized database for everybody to pull from, that kind of stuff. So we're not there yet. Really, the only way to protect yourself, to be honest, if you're an artist, is to be involved and to do your own work, to produce, to sell your work yourself. So that way you could say, no, I am the original. And then that way people who are collectors, they'll be able to actually find a record of who the originator is.
All right, thanks, Henry. Great question. And keep in mind, if you are jumping into NFTs, there are lots of fake sites. So Bored Apes has been copied, others have been copied. They have asked exchanges to take down these fake sites, but it's hard to manage. So just always be, double check, triple check what you're getting into.
I think you need more patience with NFTs. You have to be extra careful. There's a lot of ways to screw things up. And so you have to take your time a little bit and do like 3 times the research you might normally do before jumping into something, especially once you start spending money.
Right. And also for the collector or the person buying the NFTs, there was a recent story where OpenSea, a very popular exchange for NFTs, there's something called gas fees that are involved with OpenSea, and it's kind of like the cost of transactions, which are pretty steep, sometimes $50 to $300 in some cases. So when people started buying NFTs and they want to sell them, they would list them, but because they didn't want to actually pay any gas fees, they thought they could hide that listing. And so even though it's called a hack, I don't ever think it's really a hack unless it's actually something that took skill to do. So in this case, people figured out an exploit, which was be able to look at the earlier listing of your NFT. So let's say your NFT, you bought it for $1,000, it's worth $10,000, and you listed it once at $2,000. Well, somebody found that listing you had at $2,000, they could actually buy it for the $2,000. You just lost $8,000 in potential gain. So this is why it's important to really not jump into something that you really understand it. And that's what I'm going to say about that. But next question. Any advice for a nonprofit to use for fundraising? I'll start off. So early in the year, because of the Atlanta shootings, Daniel Kim, who's out of the web industry, he was maintained websites for a number of pretty famous personalities. He actually did what was considered the first nonprofit use case for NFTs, which was actually, it was all based on API. So there was like 88 of us. I know Calista was one, I was one. You can use NFTs for fundraising. I also know of basically conservation, but it really goes back to, don't think of it so much for nonprofit. It's the same concept of creating art, digitizing the art, creating a marketplace for that art, and then trading it. So whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, that doesn't really make too much of a difference in terms of mechanics. It's exactly the same. Henry, anything in addition to that?
I mean, think about it. NFT is just, again, it's just like a Kickstarter campaign or replacement. So you can do a fundraiser where you collaborate, let's say, with an artist that wants to support your project, and then they could sell NFTs and then donate the proceeds to you. You can create a membership program where you say, hey, support us here's these different tiers of NFTs. You could spend $100, 500, 1,000, 10,000, whatever, and there's these different benefits we give you. One idea I was actually just toying with the other day is actually selling board seats. So creating like a council of, like, let's say, board members, and then saying, well, to get on, you have to, purchase this membership or whatever. So there's a lot of ways. The way you could think about it is like, all the traditional ways that people raise money for nonprofits, you could just kind of transpose that to the NFT world and use the NFT as more of a exciting reason to give you that money, because they're gonna kind of participate in a new way of supporting you, and you can actually think of more innovative ways to provide benefits for owners.
So I have to go, but there was one more question, Henry, and then we can probably go to the networking session. So for those with limited means, will the cost of getting an NFT or getting into the NFT world go down as more and more people jump into this world? I think you can answer that question really well. I want to thank the Asian Business League, Asian Leaders Alliance, and NAP team for putting another Gateway series on. Really enjoyed it. I love being a part of it early on. And I'm going to say adios because I'm in Mexico City. So I will talk to all of you soon. I'm going to hand it over to Henry, and have a great night, everyone. Talk to you later.
Thank you, Keith. You're the best. So to answer his question, or the question in the chat, it's actually really cheap. I mean, it's cost nothing to get into NFTs right now. You can literally for free go to a website like superrare.com and put up, you know, a JPEG or whatever, and try to sell it. I mean, that you could even do it without paying any fees up front and have the buyer pay the fees for you. So the cost to start is not the cost. Now the cost is, what does it cost to make it successful, right? Like, for instance, if you're doing a Kickstarter campaign, if you just upload it and you don't do any promotions, it's not going to really go anywhere. So now the costs are basically all the marketing and networking and the sweat equity and labor and stuff that would go into making any project successful. But the NFT itself is free. So it'll stay free, or I mean, that's kind of the whole thing about Web3. I think it's just going to stay free. I don't know if it'll get cheaper, but maybe, I don't know. So, okay, so say you create a name for an NFT store, do I need to check for, yeah, I mean, so that's where the business, what I'm trying to, you know, I think that's a really good question, because what I'm realizing that Web 3.0 people don't realize is that they have all these ideals for the future, but they live in a reality that is based on a different set of rules. So it's kind of like a Web 3.0 mentality wrapped in a Web 2.0 existence. So, you know, a lot of times they realize there's a lot of issues like trying to do certain things. So yes, you would want to try to do, I mean, to protect yourself, you want to do the same due diligence you would launching any type of brand or something, because, you know, there's a lot of projects that just rip off other people's stuff, but that definitely is not going to hold up for the long term. And some of it might be criminal. So, you know, like, people need to really think twice before they just use a Spider-Man picture for their own NFT project or whatever. You know, you got to do your due diligence, basically. I think domain names, though, are not, I mean, anybody can own any domain name, I think, but maybe Soyeon can answer that question better. Using the brand name or whatever is a totally different ballgame.
Hi, can you hear me? Was that a question for me?
Yo, yes, what's up,
Yeah.
Soyeon?
Hi everybody. So yeah, websites don't necessarily establish a trademark. What you would need to do is to establish a pattern of more robust use for the name in trade. But however, before you invest in a domain name and then definitely stick a brand to your NFT store, you do want to do a clearance for a trademark, for available trademarks at the USPTO and nationally as well. I don't really have that much time to go into it in depth, but the reason why you want to check the USPTO, which is the national register, and then each of the states, is that sometimes businesses exist without registering their trademark with the national sort of registry. And so it's really helpful to know if there's a business with the exact name or similar name or a confusing name in the same space, like per state. I hope that helps.
Yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, USPTO is United States Patent and Trademark Office.
Trademark Office.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Sean.
So are there any other questions for Henry or Soyun?
Cool. Oh, Carl. Yeah, Carl knows everybody. I should reach out to him again. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate everybody. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, we could do the networking as well.
There seems to be a couple questions that just popped up.
That's a good question. In terms of opportunities, I mean, just feel free to email me, and then we could chat about what areas you're interested in, and that, you know, that'll help me figure out where to connect you. There's a lot of opportunities. Trust me, the NFT world is hungry for talent right now in every area you could possibly imagine, especially artists, developers, you know, that kind of stuff. Are there other environmentally friendly ways to mint NFT? There are many blockchains that are environmentally friendly or claim to be. So there are current options to, you know, use a tiny fraction of the amount of energy that, like, for instance, Ethereum or Bitcoin uses. But, you know, it goes back to user adoption. It's like, if you're on a blockchain that is environmentally friendly, but nobody knows about it and they're not buying stuff off of that blockchain, then, you know, there might not be value there. So it's kind of this game of like, which blockchain do you invest in and which do you think is going to be successful in the long term? So there are people that definitely are minting stuff on environmentally friendly blockchains. There's a lot of them, actually. Most of them are actually more environmentally friendly than the top two that are in use right now. So yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Henry and Soyun, and Keith, who's dropped off the call.